the title maybe is not appropriate because it looks like a promise of explaining things, but it's not possible in a quarter of hours. Okay, anyway. I want just maybe to make some suggestions and provocations, constructive provocations about the fact that if we want to do the things that Evelyn told about, we need different tools, not only in models. Okay, the different tools in theoretical frameworks and models are a consequence, as I always highlight, of something that comes before. That is a Weltanschauung that is much be shifted and evolved to a meta level that is able to look which are, like Edmund Husserl told us, which are the biases that we by which we are enslaved when we do science logos, when we proceed through a so-called scientific procedure. In the sense that, just to mention, Husserl understood, the first important phenomenologist, understood that, for instance, our science is based on Galilean method. But Husserl make us notice that Galileo proposed a image of the world that is a representation of it about what can be mathematized, can be reduced to a number. Galileo distinguished it in primary qualities and secondary qualities, saying that the primary ones are those that can be objective, like the weight or a mass of an object. The secondary qualities, like the beauty of a sunset. And he decided that the only thing that is worthy for science are the first ones. The problem is that this representation of the world is already idealized, is already an artifact, is already a not complete, is not reality, it's just a map. And we can speak about the world only dealing with the things that can be transformed in numbers. This is the same problem that we have in water science, that we have in life sciences, our medicine, our biology, our also social sciences that are deriving themselves in a foolish mimicking of hard sciences, because in this way they are serious and quantitative. Completely wrong, because if we remove the analogical aspect of life, we are collapsing life in a sort of representation and a stereotypized puppet. It's not the case. So the problem is, okay, can we make some, can we give some grounding to what I'm saying? Because it's true that the Galilean method actually is an ideological decision. But someone could say that also what I'm saying, it could be an ideological position. And the aim, to me, and not only to me, should be not to give opinions, not to speak of opinions. It doesn't matter what I think or what you think, which is your idea of the world. Nice, I could be curious to know, but we should try to reach and touch as close as possible a sort of truth that is speaking by itself of the quality of the world. The problem, I wrote I wrote several texts and books about these problems because fundamentally I am an epistemologist. Consequently, I tried also to deal. I spent years studying physics, okay, but the inner instance the inner call came from the need to reconnect the hiatus that has been created by a Cartesian-like vision that separates matter and information, psyche and soma, information and other things, God and reality, whatever. Actually, any time that we are able to speak of two things, we find that whichever is the level we go down to, we go down to, nothing cannot furtherly be divided, subdivided, until you understand that any represented part actually is not fundamental. A different vision that is much more powerful also in description, that has been developed in physics, I'm referring to quantum field theory, tells exactly something that is very close to this approach, telling you that relationship is what exists before than entia, parts. This is a good, I'm not saying that is the absolute truth, of course. But in order to conjugate, to connect the left brain and the right brain, I think that we have such a tool that could help us a lot in this sense, because we are able to make, let's say, models, calculation, okay? But in the awareness that parts are only the consequences of relationships. I proposing in the essay that I wrote, and I didn't know that Evelyn would have mentioned it, that in the essays that I wrote, physical analogical foundations of reality, I propose the fact that maybe an approach to describe reality that is called ontic structural realism is quite truthful, because let us to go beyond the division between qualities and substances, function and structures, parts and relationships. In fact, one of the common questions, one of the common issues in quantum field theory is, but does quantum field theory speaks of particles or of fields? This is not a trivial question, because the problem that occurred in quantum revolution were due to the fact that a new kind of thinking began to pop out because classical physics had been showing its inconsistencies and paradoxes. But like Giuliano Preparata told, this revolution, this complete transformation, this mind shift has not been completed because scientists had not yet changed the Weltanschauung, had not yet changed their sensitivity in order to interpret correctly what quantum, let's say, stuff was delivering, being stuck still to the classical categories. For instance, the concept of particle. Nothing as a particle exists in reality. Nothing. Okay? It's just an approximation. It's just a way for speakability, okay? For spendability. In quantum field theory, we are dealing with water, we are dealing with homeopathic remedies, we are dealing with living systems, we are dealing with the web of life, we are dealing with the condensed matter systems. If we think that condensed matter systems are made of pieces, we can do that, and for a lot of things this trick works, but when you try to push yourself beyond the elementary phenomenologies and go, for instance, towards something much more subtle, something much more refined, like the effect of a homeopathic remedy, or how, like Veda Austin did, putting a petri dish filled with water above a photography and freezing the water, and the water represents patterns in the freezing that are very, very, very similar to the drawing or to the picture, for instance. Or if you put a leaf of a tree under the petri dish. Or much more interesting, our medicine, and you homeopaths know this very well, our biology and medicine paradigm, let's say life science paradigm, it's awful. To say mechanistic, it's still too few, too little. It's something that's much more depressing, because in the self-considered worthy idea of knowledge that they have in life and whatever, they are not able to answer to simple questions. When an ensemble of matter and energy components is able to be told a living system, does exist a sharp threshold between living and non-living? If yes, how? Why? Where? What is this blessed information? This concept of information is valid for the biological realm? Is it valid? Where does order come from? And many other things. And these questions are, of course, pertaining to many things. Mainly the last ones, when I was saying about to pushing for our research, our questions a little forward to more refined aspects of reality. How a living being is able to deal with meanings. Pay attention that meanings is not something that pertains to speaking, to language, because it's previous to language. An amoeba has no neurons, no brain, but is able to go towards a nutrient or away from a toxin without neurons. So nothing that he's having something to do with language. It is something that is much more fundamental, thermodynamically speaking. Vabbè, I could say many things about this because this is my topics. Anyway, many stuff that, when I finished my university, I had a stronger feeling of, I felt puzzled in the sense that they explain me anything about why this kind of material is not transparent and this is, but I'm not able to understand why a dog perceives a caress and the chair doesn't. They are made of matter. And why the dead dog doesn't do it anymore? The components, the object, the composition are all the same. So, if you wanted to keep a fidelity, you want to keep an intellectual honesty to the unity, ontological unity. So, if you are not satisfied with just the story of there is something that fly away from this object that it is the body, but you want to understand that maybe instead of reasoning per parts, body and soul, you should reason by patterns, so configurations that change. Interesting landscape opens up. I have 5 minutes, yes, I know. It's always 5 minutes. Anyway, I just give you the last hint, the last few hints. I will skip all the slide because it's completely hopeless. One of the main problem of our science about above all the life sciences is this axiom: to think that phenomena that you can see at macroscopic level, for instance, my ability to speak, my memory, my teleology, can be explained by digging down and searching in microscopic stuff, as if only the bottom-up causality existed, not taking into account a very important, this is only and this is the last concept that I want to deliver to you, without considering a thing that in quantum mechanics cannot emerge, but in quantum field theory does. What is it? Is the fact that when an object like a molecule enter a game, a collective game, enter part of a collectiveness, it is not the same as before. What I mean, it's true that the collectiveness, let's say the coherence domain, let's say the dog, is made of molecules. But the molecules that you would observe outside of this collectiveness would have a certain feature and nature. But when they are part of these dynamics, they are completely different. This is something that you can see very nicely with water, because, for instance, just shortly, water molecules, when is in vapor, has a structure, also a shape, average, that is completely different when it participates to a collective oscillation. This is a very important aspect because tells us that there is a top-down causality, so we have a circular causality. So when you try to solve problem by linear diachronic causality, we are not understanding fucking anything. In the sense that life is acted both by causes from past to future, but also by scopes, aims. And you have a category that is able to join these two attractor, let me say, that is the sense. Anything that happens in the biological system makes a sense. I'm standing, I have a physiological state that is a perfect reply to anything that my perception and my autonomous, of course, and not a conscious perception is feeling, is decoding. So that's the problem. That's the problem also that I told that affect also the research in homeopathy. Oh, let's try to do the trial, the analysis in vitro. Let's try to search for molecular stuff. You are losing time and energy and money. Do you want to fly higher or do you want to stay on the ground? You are free to do that. I think that we have to begin to lift up ourselves, understanding this stuff. Otherwise, we are trying to measure the music with the thermometer, as I told yesterday. I'm not speaking of fuzzy stuff, not rooted. It's something that is very difficult to do and can be done also by using, let's say, quantitative techniques or theoretical models. But before you have the sensitivity, because when you conceive an experiment, when you conceive a layout of an experiment, when you have data, when you look at them, you have always dealing with your own categories, your own biases. your own premises by which you look at the world. If you do not make a self-critical meta-observation of this stuff, you are always self-trapped in the biases that you are putting forward. So, I finish. I skip all the slides. I just tell you that I made a lot of I tried to gather a lot of these speeches and reflections or whatever in the book that is based on my PhD thesis that you can find in a link that if you want I will tell you. Just to tell you, it's not another advertisement because I take no royalties for this book. So it's just I wrote this for people, for avoid a lot of other guys to lose years and years in searching a thing here, a thing there, and another, okay? Just to have anything. There are almost more than 600 references, and you can find the things in one place, just for your comfort. I finish, I go just to the last slide. There is no time to explain you about quantum field theory approach with respect to quantum mechanics, because you will see if we will have occasion to recollect to what I was saying before. It's noteworthy to take in mind that about the idea that particles are something fundamental. Actually not, in the sense that if we imagine particles still classically, we imagine that the world and reality is like a collection of balls, a collection of dots. Actually, the concept of quantum that originally was born was just a consequence to explain the behavior of the field that changes the states of its own in a discrete, let's say almost discrete way, having only certain levels allowed. But we do not, the idea, pay attention, the concept of photon, for instance, is something that actually no physicist has idea of what it is. What is a photon? What it is? A little ball of light that goes from here to there. I could show you that had been some interesting reflection about the critics of the concept of photons have been done, also explaining a completely concept of Planck constant, but I'm not saying anything about that because it's complex and long, but the problem is that if we conceive the quantum like something that has an autonomy, ontological autonomy, we completely lose our compass. In fact, the problem is that, you know, they say, oh, I observed the system here and I created the electron here. I observed the system there, I created the photon there. Locality and isolability are two concepts that can be applied only to the classical stuff, not to the quantum stuff. The field is non-local, not partitionable, and where causation is, let's say, synchronic. The problem are that here you are. When you make a measurement, like for instance the double split experiment of Young, and you interpret the experiment through classical categories, you are fucked up. Because you tell a story that is not the truth. The truth is that you have a non-local and encompassing field, and the position, the time, the partitionability are proper of the observer, not of the field. That's why you see things here and there. Just to let you know some these hints. So I'm finishing. I really for me one of the most important texts that I have studied is Introduction to a Real Quantum Theory from Giuliano Preparata that explain you these things very precisely, but I put all the important things of this book in mind. Even if you don't understand all the mathematics, I suggest you to read this stuff, because you have really, you know, to make a mind shift, you need not to pass from one belief to another belief. You need to pass from beliefs to knowledge. This is very different. Thank you.